Kids are being socialized into thinking it is normal to constantly be around the presence of police. Now, I'm not saying all kids are being socialized into this. Some kids continue to be just kids, but others, especially Black and brown low-income kids, are the most affected.
Daily introduction of the police to schools subjects kids to pat-downs and metal detector scans. Not even adults, and these kids are already being criminalized and exposed to the power of the law and the rule of the man.
Depending on the intersecting identities of a person, they may face the presence of police on a daily basis. This is a characteristic of the police state.
The police state, as defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is a political unit characterized by repressive governmental control of political, economic, and social life, usually by an arbitrary exercise of power by the police, and especially the secret police, in the place of regular operation of administration and judicial organs of the government according to the publicly known legal procedures.
So, what does this mean?
Let's simplify this. What does this police state look like? Police have become increasingly militarized. They use tactics and tools that were once used strictly for the military against common citizens. A representation of the police state can be a lined-up SWAT team equipped with helmets and shields, or be as simple as the neighborhood watch. It is essentially any entity that polices the actions of others that represent the ideals of those in charge.
What does the police state do? The police state serves different purposes for different communities. Within white communities, the police state might serve as a protector. Within Black and brown communities, the police state often serves as an enforcer. Through the use of coercive violence and hyper-surveillance, the police state controls the actions of Black and brown communities.
Why does the police state exist? There is something known as the power elite who control most of the resources we use every day, such as access to healthcare, education, positive relationships with law enforcement, and among other resources. Although there are very few exceptions,
Like Oprah.
The power elite is mostly made up of white, cisgender, heterosexual men with important jobs. Simply put, they want to continue to give access to resources to people who look like them and think others are not deserving of the same treatment. And they do this by using the police state as a tool to combat anyone who oppresses their ideology.
When did the police state come to existence? Well, this is a difficult question to answer, because the police have become militarized throughout time. But to give context for the police state, it's important to know that the inception of police started during slavery in the formation of slave patrols. White men in these times would use coercive violence to enforce obedience by slaves.
The origins of policing show us that the purpose of police has historically been to control Black bodies within the United States. Some might argue that the US doesn't have a police state because we are past racism.
Just because Obama was president doesn't mean we live in a post-racial society.
Mounting evidence is showing us that the police state is alive and well. The constant presence of police has created fear and distrust within the Black and brown communities, resulting in very real consequences.
Over and over, we have seen the actions of police result in the death of Black people with little to no consequences to the police officers.
Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Tanisha Anderson, Tamir Rice, among so many other Black people, were killed by police officers with no charges to the police.
It is evident that the police state, which is constantly present in Black communities, allows police to commit murder and incite fear to control Black people.
Even in the protests that combat the killing of Black community members, we see the police state present. Police in riot gear face off against peaceful protesters.
Contrary to beliefs, a simple Pepsi won't stop the police state.
The police state also negatively affects other communities, including the immigrant population.
Especially in contemporary times, where anti-immigrant rhetoric is at an all-time high, the police state is using dominant discourse to excuse deportations of non-criminals.
The large presence of the police state in the lives of immigrant populations is even seen within governmental institutions that are meant to help the public, like food stamp services. People who are giving out these services have been known to call the ICE on people they perceive as undocumented.
This is an example of how the common public has taken on the role of the police state in punishing marginalized communities. Hyper-surveillance does not necessarily mean cameras everywhere, but is instead exemplified by the constant questioning of legal status of those who are darker.
Laws have also been used by the government to enforce control of marginalized populations and to legitimize the use of the police state. Take, for example, SB 1070, a law in Arizona that allows for the detainment of non-U.S. citizens that are not registered with the police. So when an officer sees a person of color, what do? Well, of course the officer has to make sure that they're allowed to be in the country.
The police state exists within the United States, and if up until now you have not realized it, then it is likely you have had the privilege to be unaffected by the violence, surveillance, discrimination, and control incited by the police state.